Everything changed in April. Alan and Cheryl's back office betrayal. Could you ever look at your husband the same way again? I saw my husband, Alan, laughing a little too hard with my boss, Cheryl. It was April 2025, at the firm's retirement party in Seattle. The space was rented, all glass and steel overlooking the Puget Sound, trying to look modern but really just feeling cold. The air conditioning was blasting, even with 100 people crammed in, sipping champagne and making small talk. Fake smiles all around. Alan's smile, though, that was a genuine, sparkling thing, aimed squarely at Cheryl. They vanished into the back office, and I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. What would you have done? Would you have let it go? I didn't. The retirement party was for old Mr. Henderson, the firm, a mid-sized marketing agency called Creative Solutions, was throwing him a lavish send-off, complete with an open bar and a caterer who apparently thought brie and crackers were the height of culinary sophistication. I worked there as a marketing director, a position I'd fought tooth and nail for. Alan, my husband, was in sales, usually charming the pants off potential clients. I loved him, I thought. We'd been married for 15 years. Through the blinds, I saw them. The filing cabinet was open, its metallic insides reflecting the fluorescent light. Alan's face was close to Cheryl's, too close. And then I saw it, the lipstick, smudged, unmistakable, on his collar. My stomach dropped. Betrayal in motion, I felt sick, like I'd swallowed something rotten. I backed away from the door. I needed to think. I needed air. I walked out onto the balcony, the cold Seattle air hitting me like a slap. The sound of the city rose up to meet me, a cacophony of car horns and distant sirens. I leaned against the railing, trying to catch my breath. This couldn't be happening. Not to me. Not to us. The retirement party buzzed on inside, oblivious to the earthquake that had just ripped through my world. I watched the ferry make its way across the Sound, a tiny white speck against the gray water. How long had this been going on? Was this why Alan had been so distant lately? Why he'd been working late so often? I remembered a conversation we'd had just last week. I'd mentioned that my bonus was smaller than expected, and he'd brushed it off, saying, "It's just money, honey. Don't worry about it." Easy for him to say. Did he know something I didn't? Was he being taken care of somehow? I decided I had to know. I couldn't stand here, paralyzed, while my life unraveled before my eyes. I turned around and marched back inside, my heart pounding in my chest. I needed to find Alan. I needed answers. I found him by the dessert table, chatting with a group of colleagues. He looked perfectly normal, perfectly innocent, like he hadn't just been caught red-handed with my boss in the back office. I plastered on a smile and walked over to him, my voice sounding surprisingly steady. "Honey," I said, "can I talk to you for a minute?" He looked surprised to see me, but he smiled and excused himself from the group. We walked towards the quieter corner of the room, near the potted ferns. The ferns, I thought, were probably fake too, just like everything else in this place. "What's up?" he asked, his eyes flickering nervously. "I saw you," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "In the back office, with Cheryl." His face paled. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. "The lipstick," I continued, my voice rising. "On your collar. Don't even try to deny it." "It's not what you think," he stammered. "Oh, really?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Then what is it, Alan? Tell me. I'm dying to know." He looked around nervously, as if afraid someone might be listening. "Can we talk about this later?" he whispered. "Somewhere private?" "No," I said, my voice firm. "We're talking about it now, right here, in front of everyone." He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly tight. "Please," he begged, "don't do this." "Don't do what, Alan?" I said, pulling my arm away. "Expose you for the liar and cheater that you are." He flinched. I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. "You're overreacting," he said, trying to regain his composure. "It was just a mistake." A mistake? I repeated, incredulous. Lipstick on your collar is a mistake. What kind of mistake is that, Alan? He didn't answer. He just stood there, looking guilty and ashamed. I felt a wave of anger wash over me, so intense it almost knocked me off my feet. I wanted to scream, to hit him, to do something, anything, to release the pain that was tearing me apart. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "I'm done, Alan. I'm done with you. I'm done with this marriage." He stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You can't be serious," he said. "Oh, I'm serious," I replied, deadly serious. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there alone. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I was afraid that if I did, I might change my mind, and I knew, deep down, that I couldn't. I couldn't stay with someone who had betrayed me so deeply. I moved out of our apartment and into a small studio downtown. The place was cramped and noisy, but it was mine. I spent hours staring at the walls, trying to make sense of what had happened. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted him so completely? I avoided going to work. I couldn't face Cheryl. I couldn't face the pitying looks from my colleagues. I knew that everyone was talking about me, about what had happened at the retirement party. I imagined them whispering behind my back, judging me, feeling sorry for me. One afternoon, I decided to go back to the office. I needed to clear out my desk, to collect my things. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't put it off any longer. I had to face the music. As I walked into the office, I felt a wave of nausea. Everything looked the same, but everything felt different. The air was thick with tension. People avoided my gaze. I could feel their eyes on me, following my every move. I went straight to my office and started packing my things. It was a painful process. Each object I touched, each photograph I picked up, reminded me of happier times. Times when I thought I had a perfect life. Times when I thought I could trust Alan. As I was emptying my desk drawer, I found a folder I didn't recognize. It was labeled Consulting Agreements. Curious, I opened it and started reading. My heart began to race. The folder contained a series of contracts, all signed by Cheryl, authorizing payments to a consulting firm called A. Miller Consulting. The address listed for the firm was a post office box in a different state, and the payments were substantial. Thousands of dollars paid out over the past 3 years. I felt a growing sense of unease. Something wasn't right. I decided to do some digging. I went online and searched for A. Miller Consulting. I found nothing. No website, no business listings, no trace of its existence. That's when it hit me. A. Miller, Alan Miller, my husband. Cheryl had been giving Alan bonuses, disguised as consulting fees. Bonuses that I knew nothing about. Bonuses that should have been going to me. How much, I wondered, had he received? I added up the amounts listed in the contracts. $63,800. Over 3 years. I felt a surge of anger so intense it almost choked me. They had been stealing from me, lying to me, betraying me in the worst possible way. I printed out the contracts and stuffed them into my bag. I knew what I had to do. I had to report them. I had to expose their scam. But then a seed of doubt began to grow in my mind. What if I was wrong? What if there was a legitimate explanation for the payments? What if I was just being paranoid? And what about my reputation? If I reported them and it turned out I was wrong, I would be ruined. No one would ever trust me again. I would be labeled as a troublemaker, a liar, a vindictive ex-wife. The stakes were high. I had to be absolutely certain before I took any action. I decided to do some more investigating. I needed to find proof, solid evidence, that would back up my suspicions. I started by looking through Alan's financial records. I knew it was an invasion of privacy, but I felt I had no choice. I needed to know the truth. I spent hours poring over bank statements, credit card bills, and tax returns. I found nothing to link Alan to A. Miller Consulting, nothing to suggest that he had received any money from Cheryl. I was starting to lose hope. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just being crazy. Then I remembered something. A conversation I had overheard between Alan and his mother a few months ago. They had been talking about a special account that Alan had set up, just in case. I knew where Alan kept his important documents, in a locked box in the back of his closet. I had never opened it before. I respected his privacy. But now I felt I had no choice. I found the key to the box hidden in his sock drawer. My hands trembling, I unlocked the box and opened it. Inside, I found a stack of documents: passports, insurance policies, and bank statements. I started going through the bank statements, and then I found it. A statement for an account in the name of Alan Miller at a bank in the Cayman Islands. The account had been opened 3 years ago, and the deposits matched the amounts listed in the consulting agreements. I had my proof. I had caught them red-handed. They were guilty, and now I had to decide what to do. I could report them to the authorities. I could expose their scheme and ruin their careers. I could seek revenge. Or I could let it go. I could walk away and try to rebuild my life. I could forgive them. It was a difficult decision. I spent days agonizing over it. I talked to my friends, my family, my therapist. Everyone had different opinions. Some told me to go for the jugular, to make them pay for what they had done. Others told me to move on, to focus on my own happiness. One night, I was sitting alone in my apartment, staring out the window at the city lights. The rain was hitting the glass, blurring the images. I felt lost and confused. I didn't know what to do. Suddenly, I heard a knock on the door. I hesitated. Who could it be? It was late. I walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. It was Cheryl, my boss, my husband's lover. I opened the door. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cold. She looked nervous and uncomfortable. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She walked into my apartment. She looked around, taking in the small space, the bare walls. "I know what you know," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her. "Alan told me," she continued, "about the consulting agreements, about the money." "And?" I said, my voice still cold. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know that doesn't mean much, but I am. I never meant for things to go this far." "Really?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Because it seems to me like you went pretty far. You stole from me. You lied to me. You slept with my husband." She winced. "I know," she said. "I made a mistake, a big one, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it right." "Whatever it takes," I repeated. "What exactly does that mean?" "I'll resign from the company," she said. "I'll pay you back the money. I'll do anything you want." I thought about it for a moment. I could make her life a living hell. I could ruin her career, her reputation, everything. But what would that accomplish? Would it make me feel better? Would it bring back the past? No, it wouldn't. It would just make me as bad as them. I looked at Cheryl, really looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes, the regret on her face. I realized that she was just as much a victim as I was. She had made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But she was willing to face the consequences. I took a deep breath and said, "I don't want your resignation, and I don't want your money." She looked surprised. "But what do you want?" she asked. "I want you to tell the truth," I said. "I want you to admit what you did, to everyone, to the company, to the authorities." She hesitated. "That would ruin me," she said. "I know," I replied. "But it's the right thing to do." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." She admitted to the consulting agreements, the payments, the affair. She resigned from the company and agreed to cooperate with the authorities. Alan was devastated. He lost his job, his reputation, his wife. He was left with nothing. I could have gloated. I could have reveled in their downfall. But I didn't. I felt a sense of sadness, of loss. I had lost my husband, my career, my sense of security. But I had also gained something. I had gained my freedom. I had gained my integrity. I had gained my self-respect. I started my own marketing company. It was a struggle at first, but I worked hard, and I built a successful business. I surrounded myself with people I could trust, people who valued honesty and integrity. I never spoke to Alan again. I didn't want to. I had moved on. I had rebuilt my life. Years later, I ran into Cheryl at a conference. She had started a nonprofit organization, helping women who had been victims of workplace harassment. She seemed happy and fulfilled. We talked for a while. We didn't dwell on the past. We focused on the future. We had both learned a valuable lesson. Betrayal is a painful thing. It can shatter your world, destroy your trust, and leave you feeling lost and alone. But it doesn't have to define you. You can choose to rise above it. You can choose to forgive. You can choose to rebuild your life. And that's exactly what I did. I chose to forgive. I chose to rebuild. I chose to be happy. So what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have sought revenge, or would you have chosen forgiveness? Life throws curveballs. It tests us. It breaks us down. But it also gives us the opportunity to rise again, stronger and wiser than before. Never lose yourself. Always stay true to your values. Forgive but never forget. It's been 20 years since that retirement party. I often think about Alan and Cheryl. I hope they found peace. I know I have. Write what you would choose in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. The memory of that night is still so vivid. The rain pounding against the window, Cheryl's pale face, the weight of the decision I had to make. It felt like a movie, but it was my life. What would you have done? Seriously, think about it. It's easy to say you'd be the bigger person, but when you're staring into the eyes of someone who's betrayed you so deeply, forgiveness feels impossible. After Cheryl left, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, replaying the whole sordid affair in my head. Every detail, every nuance, every stolen glance. I kept thinking about Alan, about the life we had built together, the dreams we had shared. It was all a lie, all of it. Or was it? Were there genuine moments of love and happiness buried beneath the deceit? Or had I been completely deluded, living in a fantasy world of my own making? I got up and went to the kitchen. I needed coffee. Strong black coffee. I brewed a pot and sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the dark city. The only light came from the streetlights, casting long, eerie shadows across the room. I had a splitting headache and a knot in my stomach. I knew I had to go to work, but I dreaded it. I didn't want to face my colleagues, to endure their pitying glances and hushed whispers. But I couldn't hide forever. I had to confront the situation head on. I got dressed, grabbed my purse, and headed out the door. The walk to the office was agonizing. Every step felt like a mile. I could feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. As I walked through the doors of Creative Solutions, I felt like I was entering a war zone. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at me. I could hear the whispers, the murmurs. I kept my head down and walked straight to my office. My desk was a mess, piles of paperwork, half-empty coffee cups, and stacks of files. It was a reflection of my life at that moment, chaotic and disorganized. I sat down and took a deep breath. I had to get through this. I had to stay strong. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. It was Sarah, my closest friend at work. She came in and sat down beside me. "How are you doing?" she asked, her voice soft and concerned. I shrugged. "As well as can be expected," I replied. She reached out and took my hand. "I'm so sorry," she said, "about everything." "Thanks," I said. "I appreciate it." We sat in silence for a moment. Then Sarah said, "So what are you going to do?" I looked at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean, are you going to stay here?" she said. "After what happened?" I hadn't really thought about it. I had been so focused on dealing with the immediate aftermath of the betrayal that I hadn't considered my long-term future. I don't know, I said. I haven't decided yet. Well, if you want my opinion, Sarah said, I think you should leave. You deserve better than this. You don't need to be around those people anymore. I knew she was right. I did deserve better. But leaving would mean starting over. It would mean giving up everything I had worked so hard for. Could I really do that? The weeks that followed were a blur. Cheryl made her announcement. The company was in shock. Alan was ostracized. Everything I knew was falling apart. I spent most of my time at home, avoiding the world. I binge-watched movies, ate junk food, and cried myself to sleep. One day, my mother called. I hadn't talked to her since the party. Our relationship was complicated, to say the least. I heard what happened, she said, her voice tight. I'm so sorry, honey. Thanks, Mom, I said. There was a long pause. Then she said, You know, I never really liked Alan. I was surprised. My mother had always seemed to adore Alan. I just never thought he was good enough for you, she said. He was always so ambitious. Too ambitious, if you ask me. I always worried he was using you. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Had my own mother seen something I had missed? Had she known all along that Alan was a snake? Why didn't you say anything? I asked, my voice trembling. I didn't want to hurt you, she said. I thought you were happy, I sighed. I thought I was too, I said. But I guess I was wrong. What do you think? Should she have said something? Is it better to stay silent to avoid hurting someone, or to speak up and risk causing pain? It's a dilemma I grapple with constantly. After talking to my mother, I realized that I couldn't stay in Seattle. I needed a fresh start. I needed to get away from the memories, the pain, the betrayal. I decided to move to California. I had always dreamed of living in California, of soaking up the sunshine and pursuing my passions. Now, I had the perfect excuse to make that dream a reality. I packed up my belongings, said goodbye to my friends, and drove south. The drive was long and arduous, but it was also liberating. With each mile I put between myself and Seattle, I felt lighter, freer, more hopeful. I arrived in Los Angeles with nothing but a suitcase, a few $1,000s in my bank account, and a burning desire to start over. I found a small apartment in a trendy neighborhood, a place filled with young artists and aspiring actors. I started taking classes in photography, something I had always wanted to do but had never had the time for. I met new people, explored new places, and discovered new passions. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive.